tracking about 0.5% higher on both the S&P and the Dow and the NASDAQ, Tim. NASDAQ 100 up about 0.6%.
Hey, something that's not higher right now is Bitcoin down 2%. The Digital Assets Summit happening at the White House. Trump's Bitcoin reserve, it's disappointing the market. It's weighing on crypto. We're going to dive into that in just a few minutes.
All right, so crypto may be down, but you know what's up?
Is it Broadcom?
Very well said.
Oh, I kind of know what's coming on the show.
It's like he planned this. It's up almost 8% in today's session. It's up enough to reverse the course of chips over the last few weeks. That's a good question because we've had a lot of news in this sector and we've seen the semi-space beaten up. So Ian King, our go-to on all things semiconductors, he's going to weigh in on all of this.
Do you want a rookie Michael Jordan jersey?
Not really.
Okay, well, you'll save $10 million if you don't want one, because that's how much it'll cost you.
I'm going to cancel the check.
Okay, well, I guess we'll talk about that a little later. That's a deep tease for so that's too big to send via Zelle, I'm guessing. Hey, all that and more coming up over the next 2 hours right here on Bloomberg Business Week. First, though, a check of the day's trade and top business stories. Here he is, Charlie Pellet.
Thank you very much, and here's what's going on. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all advancing. We got 54 minutes to go until we wrap up what will likely be another down week for the S&P 500 index. But right now, we're looking at gains on this Friday with the S&P up 25 now, 57.64. That's an advance of about 0.5%. Dow Industrials up 202 now, higher by 0.5%. NASDAQ up 112, up by about 0.6%. It is a roller coaster week for U.S. markets with the S&P looking at a loss right now of just about 3% on the week. 10-year at 4.31%, and on this Jobs Friday, we've got the 2-year yielding 3.99%. Gold lower a little change, down just about $5 the ounce, 29.06. West Texas Intermediate crude up 1%, 67.06 on WTI. And a busy day for Bitcoin traders. Lots of headlines. Bitcoin, though, now lower by 2%, just above $88,000, $88,070 right now on Bitcoin. So again, recapping here, we've got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all higher. S&P climbing by about 0.5%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Hey, thanks for that update, Charlie. Do appreciate it. Well, the president is speaking right now to reporters. We're going to get his comments and the tape playback. We will bring those to you. After that, he is headed to make comments to CEOs who've traveled for a digital asset summit happening at the White House this afternoon. We'll bring you those comments as well when we get them. Last night, the president signed an executive order that creates a Bitcoin-specific reserve. Here's David Sachs, the White House crypto and AI czar, on Bloomberg earlier.
The reason why we need a Bitcoin reserve is that the federal government already owns some. In fact, it obtained around 400,000 Bitcoin over the past decade through criminal and civil forfeitures and seizures. And so the government has to have a strategy for how it deals with this.
That's David Sachs, crypto and AI czar, earlier on Bloomberg TV. Stacey Marie Ishmael is a Bloomberg News executive editor for crypto, joining us here in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. Stacey, the creation of a Bitcoin-specific reserve, it fulfills this promise that the president made on the campaign trail. The details, though, they fell short of industry expectations. We saw Bitcoin fall. Why are some people in the industry disappointed?
The way to think about this is the difference between someone saying, we're going to take all of the stuff we have and we're not going to sell it, and someone saying, and we're going to buy a lot more. And I think what the industry was really hoping for was that, the U.S. government would come out, as they thought Trump was going to do when he said this in July, and pledge two things: that the U.S. government would not sell any of the Bitcoin it currently has. And the reason the government currently has Bitcoin is because, if they seize crypto from criminals, for instance, they kind of have to put that somewhere and they hold on to it. But not only, so the U.S. government isn't going to sell their Bitcoin, but they also have been pretty clear that they have no plans to buy more at scale. And as a result, this idea that the government would be like a buyer of last resort for the Bitcoin market doesn't really seem to be playing out.
All right, I'm going to ask a really stupid question, but do we have a cocaine reserve? Do we have a fentanyl reserve? I'm trying to understand, because this is right. I'm just asking, do we have to have a reserve for these things that are confiscated?
Well, we have them. I don't know about the cocaine and fentanyl. Can't comment on the drug policy, not my area.
Is it a strategic reserve?
And so one of the big differences, and as you heard from David Sachs just now, is this idea of really tracking this as a financial asset that the government wants to pay attention to. So they've spent a lot of time talking about, we really need to audit what we have, we need to understand what we have. And then as it relates to the stockpile, which for maximum confusion is a separate thing, that's where all the other tokens that aren't Bitcoin are going to live, they will consider selling some of those, right? So again, it's about, they want to say, we're just going to keep the stuff we have as it relates to Bitcoin. The other things, we might keep it, we might get rid of it, but at least we're taking it seriously.
But what's the connotation of a reserve specifically? Like I get it for strategic petroleum reserves and why we have that, but what's the strategic theory or thinking behind a reserve for crypto or Bitcoin?
This has been something a lot of people have asked, and the way that, we've been trying to explain it in our reporting is that traditionally, the idea of a reserve was something that really was under the auspices of the Treasury. Right. And in the executive order, the one that he signed last night, you do see this emphasis on, the secretaries of the Treasury and of Commerce can make decisions about what else they want to do. And they can, if they were to add to the Bitcoin reserve, not saying that they will, but they could decide to do so as long as it's sort of taxpayer budget neutral. So they would have to kind of find ways to buy it without increasing any costs or expenses. And that's where the reserve thing comes in. It lives within this universe of Treasury and Commerce.
It seems like a really measured approach to attempting to appease the crypto industry and fulfill a campaign promise without doing something that would invite criticism of spending money on something that taxpayers don't necessarily want.
I mean, there was a lot of criticism initially when, Trump as a candidate started talking about this on the campaign trail. People made similar points to you, Carol, which is like, what is this for? This is a highly volatile asset.
Right.
This isn't something you can use for international trade in any easy sense. And so I do agree with you, Tim, that like the way that they rolled this out seems to have been designed to address at least some of the more explicit concerns that people have. There are also people who are like, there's no universe in which this has to exist in any form, right? Like even with some of the things that have put into place. We saw there was a statement from French Hill that there's a feeling that Congress hasn't been sufficiently consulted or involved in this process. And that's something else that we're looking out for.
It does seem to me that the only change here between the policy that existed before this executive order last night is that we're going to inventory the crypto that we have, and we're not going to sell the Bitcoin.
I would say the not going to sell the Bitcoin is the big one. It is unclear to us whether the insistence that there hadn't been an inventory, like we haven't been able to confirm that ourselves. Like there are a lot of blockchain analytics firm who have been tracking for years how much Bitcoin is held by the US government, because in theory, everything on a blockchain is public, right? And so there should have been ways, even for the current administration that are inheriting all of this, to be able to have a snapshot of what those holdings are across agencies.
Might all not be lost in terms of there's still kind of regulatory oversight of crypto, and there are things that could come out of Washington in terms of policies that are easy and maybe supportive of the crypto industry. I mean, time will tell, right? But still could come.
Folks are eagerly awaiting Paul Atkins to be properly sworn in as chair of the SEC. There's an interim chair right now. He's been very busy, making sure that his folks are in some cases dropping, in other cases pausing open investigations into crypto. There's rhetoric around, regulators going to be taking a closer look at this idea of debanking and whether it was harder for crypto companies to have access to the banking rails. So certainly there are those things at the policy level. There's also legislation that might be coming up around, things that create a more supportive environment either way.
So fair to say, at this point, the president has fulfilled what he promised, at least partially on the campaign trail?
And that, just to kind of quote what they said in the executive orders, like this is in fulfillment of a campaign process. We promised, we said we were going to get you a Bitcoin reserve, and here you are. But
still, a lot of people in the industry says it doesn't go far enough.
I think it's very hard to keep everyone in crypto happy at the same time.
Good point.
I think that's really fair. What are you watching for when we expect to hear from the president later on this meeting with the crypto executives? What are you watching out for?
We want to see if there's any more news that might come out of this. Will there be any statements on this idea of debanking? Will anything be announced about partnerships, et cetera? And then really going into next week, like what's the congressional mood as it relates to the details of the implementation of these things?
Is there we had this interview with David Sachs earlier, Caroline Hyde and Jackie DeValos on Bloomberg Technology, and they asked David Sachs specifically about ways that the crypto, or I want to clarify just the Bitcoin portion.
Yep, the reserve portion.
The reserve portion could be used to perhaps make money, staking, for example. Can you explain what that means and whether or not, like, the U.S. government could get into the business of using its crypto to actually make money?
Yeah, the way to think about staking is like it's letting somebody borrow your Bitcoin and then you getting a yield on that, right? So there's many financial markets in which versions of this happen.
Sounds like shorting almost a little bit. Maybe
like,
not with the expectation.
There are various analogies. You're not necessarily doing it because you expect the price to go down.
Exactly.
But it is certainly something that is very popular in other parts of the crypto market. Whether and how the government would be able to do that, who the counterparties would be, how they would assess risk. There's like a lot of technical details that would need to be worked out.
Speaking of technical details, do we know who holds the Bitcoin that the U.S. has?
Are you secretly reading the emails I'm sending to my reporters?
No, but is this all in a
great question.
Coinbase account? Like, who has this Bitcoin?
It's one of the questions that we've asked, and Caroline had and others are chasing this down. What we've heard from David Sachs speaking to reporters is that for whoever ends up being the custodian for the reserve, there will be some kind of government procurement process. But if you know, please email my team.
And then what is it when the administration changes? Do we have to kill that person because it's going to be a new person? I mean, like, knowing the digital code. Sorry, it's a little bit of a wacky Friday for me. No, it's just kind of like the questions that come up because it's such a different universe.
It's a very different universe, and actually, that point about any potential change of administration is one of the reasons that people would like for this to not just be enshrined by executive order, right? Because the idea is like an EO could be overturned by a subsequent administration. And so, those are folks that are seeking a legislative approach, a congressional approach, something that enshrines this in like sovereign law of the United States on an ongoing basis.
Stacey, as someone who studies this world, and we're still figuring it all out as we go, right? But I mean, does it make sense for the U.S. to have some kind of strategic reserve? It's, they've got it anyway. Does it make sense to kind of, put it with that connotation?
I mean, I think rhetorically, it certainly solves for the pledge, right? And I think that politically, that is something that I am sure advisors would say, like, hey, this is the way that we're going to do this. I think the longer term question is there any meaningful distinction to the markets of having something that was previously just held and now held with a slightly different name? And based on the reaction today, a lot of traders don't seem to think so.
Well, is it fair to say now, at least as of this point, taxpayer money will not be used to buy crypto?
That is the extremely strong and consistent assertion of everyone we've spoken to about this in government so far.
Unless Congress gets involved and says, we need to actually buy Bitcoin or crypto.
For national security reasons?
Yeah, that remains to be seen. But as it's currently designed, there's a big emphasis on taxpayer neutral at best.
Is there a tension with the whole idea of a decentralized cryptocurrency that doesn't have oversight or control of a government, and then a government getting involved in it?
It's certainly an irony that, an asset that was created in explicit rejection of government and banks is now being endorsed and embraced and supported by, one of the largest administrations in the world.
I mean, that's what I think about, that giving it this designation is almost like a knighting, or making it official, right? It puts it in gives it a different stature, I would say.
And that is an ongoing tension for the industry because, on the one hand, the people who are attracted to it because it was a rejection of all of those things that you're describing feel let down by that. But on the other, the people who are like, this makes me feel safer about my long-term savings portfolio are pretty happy.
One thing I think...
And sorry, all you other cryptocurrencies, because this is the chosen one. One thing that I think about is... like a fund that's being that President Trump wants to set up, like a sovereign wealth fund. Mm-hmm. We know he wants to do this. That seems to be, to me, like this could be a side door to actually acquire crypto, because sovereign wealth funds are used to buy assets, oftentimes equities, and even in some cases invest in other types of assets.
We are absolutely interested in how and whether a sovereign wealth fund would, kind of coexist with this idea of the Bitcoin reserve and the separate digital asset stockpile, because to your point, that is potentially a different way entirely for the government to be engaging in possibly very sizable transactions of different kinds.
Okay.
I love when we sit and talk with you. I feel like I just learned a little bit more about crypto because it is a world that we have lots of guests, and I think you and I come off and we're like, still don't quite get it. Still don't quite get it.
Well, I mean, I think
Understanding kind of its role within the
we're at this
financial
point
system.
in the crypto world, Stacey, that where we've seen up until a few days ago, we saw a huge increase in the price of many of the traditional crypto assets, and we haven't been through a so-called crypto winter in a little while.
Some months.
Some months, yeah. But if that happens, does this conversation shift? And basically people are like, wait a second, this stuff is here's another time that we see a quick reduction in the value of these assets. And now we're concerned that the U.S. is not selling these things because it had the opportunity to do it when they were more highly valued.
Well, here's the interesting thing about a long-term buy and hold strategy. You're not optimizing for short-term blips, right? And that is something that David Sachs was saying today. Like this is about like long-term, in the crypto parlance, is something known as diamond hands, which is no matter what happens, you don't let go. And it seems that the U.S. government is embracing that approach to this asset.
So then does it provide a floor to the price of Bitcoin?
I think it is very hard to look at what the floor price of Bitcoin is when there is so much else that is driving sentiment in the world, because we've only talked about this, but there's also tariffs, there's geopolitical considerations, there's concerns about inflation, stagflation. So I think that right now, we are very much in a period of one of the things driving the price of Bitcoin is the U.S. administration, but there are 15 other things as well.
Which is a great segue to take everybody to the U.S. administration. Stacey Marie Ishmael, Bloomberg News executive editor for crypto. To the White House we go, a playback of some comments from President Trump earlier. Let's listen in.
Fantastic job in making you at home. So I would very much appreciate it. First time it's ever been in this part of the world. And it's an honor. Thank you very much, Johnny.
Thank you. Thank you, President. Thank you, President. Well, it is a great achievement to bring the World Cup next year, the FIFA World Cup in 26 here in the United States, together with Mexico and Canada. And this summer, actually, we have a new competition, the FIFA Club World Cup in 25, from the 14th of June to the 13th of July, only in the United States of America. 11 cities, 12 stadiums, the best players in the world, the best teams in the world. America will welcome the world. There will be millions of people coming, Mr. President, millions of people. The economic impact is $40 billion US between now and next year. We will create 200,000 jobs for these two World Cups, and more than that, we will give joy and happiness to the entire world, and this is priceless, definitely. So thank you, Mr. President, for setting up this task force, because it is important that everyone that comes to America feels safe, feels welcome, and that's why it's important that the government puts together this White House task force chaired by the President himself. It shows the importance of the FIFA World Cups, I should say, because there are many, many topics.
We're listening to FIFA President Gianni Infantino.
We want everyone who comes to America and who goes to watch one of these games. We have 10 million tickets for sale. It's like 3 Super Bowls every day for 1 month. That everyone that goes feels safe, feels happy, and feels that we are doing something special. So we're here to create and to make the best show on the planet ever, and we'll do it together, Mr. President.
Oh, that's great. I love what he said, like 3 Super Bowls a day for a month. That's what it is.
That's what it is.
That's really amazing when you think of it. I've never heard that expression. That's a lot. When we made this, it was made during my term, my first term, and it was so sad because I said, can you imagine, I'm not going to be president, and that's too bad. And then what happened is they rigged the election and I became president. So that was a good thing. That was a good thing. That was quite a quite an achievement for both of us. So I'll be president during the World Cup and during the Olympics, which we were very instrumental in getting. And then, of course, we have our 250th birthday, too, and of that I wasn't instrumental. That just happened to fall on the same time. So we have those three big events. You don't get very much bigger than that. The Olympics, the World Cup, and number 250. And it's a great honor, but I appreciate your selecting us. And we were selected a long time ago, though, during my first term, and it's an honor to be with you, Johnny. Been
Thank
my
you.
friend for
My
a long
honor.
time.
Absolutely.
He's a great
Thank you so
gentleman.
much.
Okay, I'll sign this, and that makes it official, right?
That makes it official, yes.
That's good, yeah.
Here we are. Then we have to start working.
Can you talk a little bit about the halftime show that you anticipate for the championship? Will it be like the Super Bowl halftime show or better?
Well, you know, the Super Bowl has around 100 million viewers or 150 million viewers. The World Cup final has 2 billion viewers. So we have to make it 20 times better and 20 times bigger than the Super Bowl.
I think it'll be better. I think it will be better.
Any idea the economic impact of this in all these cities around the country? It's got to be huge.
Yeah, it's huge. It's around 40 billion in only the United States, 40 billion US dollars, the economic impact, 200,000 jobs created. It's so per city you can divide by 11, and you know a little bit what each city gets, more or less. Some cities get more, others get less. But we'll have, 10 million tourists coming, some with tickets, others without tickets, who just want to be here during these World Cups.
What team is favored now, if there's such a thing? I mean, do they have a team like so many of these great famous teams? What team seems to be favored?
Well, on the club one, which takes place this year, of course, Real Madrid, Manchester City, Bayern Munich, the Germans, Paris Saint-Germain, the French. The big ones are always there, and these clubs are multinationals. They have players from all countries.
They always seem to be there.
They are always there.
Those great
They are
teams.
always there. Yeah. And then next year, Argentina, Brazil,
Right.
England, Germany, Spain.
It's going to be great.
So it will be great.
Any questions for Johnny?
U.S.?
US is coming up. US is coming. Watch the US. Some very, very good players playing in Europe, but we need to bring them back here to
So
play here.
can the U.S. win?
The US can win, yes, with the public behind.
See?
They playing some of the top teams.
He knows.
Yeah. They playing some of
So
the top
there's
teams.
a shot, right?
Yeah, there is a shot. Absolutely,
That's
yes.
great. Well, we'll hold that up for you guys. Brian, did you have another question?
Well, I was just going to say, this continues your pursuit to bring America back in every aspect, the economy, world peace,
Yeah.
sports now, which is awesome. I want to preview a little bit of the Olympics. I know you talked about that before.
Well,
Bring the Olympics.
I'm just very happy to have done it. I mean, I didn't think this was going to happen. I said, I'll be sitting there, but not as president. So I was, very honored. Actually, Johnny reminded me, called me up very early on. He said, you're going to be president during this whole thing after we won. So it's a great honor for our country to have it, actually. It's a big deal. It's, I don't know which is bigger, the Olympics or the World Cup. What is the story on that? Can I ask you that
No,
question?
the World Cup is much, much, much bigger than the Olympics. Come on. and it's in the whole country. Huh?
Yeah,
The Olympics
we've
is in
got
one
them
city.
both.
Mr. President, it's a long way off, Mr. President, but do you foresee yourself attending some matches or a match?
Oh, yeah, sure. I would like to. I'd like to go to certainly more than one.
Yes.
We'll be making the rounds. It's a period of a month,
Yeah.
and it's really top of the line. It's one of the great events, maybe one of the great events of anywhere in the world.
Yes.
Mr. President, since you last spoke about it yesterday, some details have come out about your cabinet meeting with Elon Musk and some clashes potentially between Secretary Rubio and Secretary.
No clash. I was there. You're just a troublemaker, and you're not supposed to be asking that question because we're talking about the World Cup. Elon gets along great with Marco, and they're both doing a fantastic job. There is no clash.
Mr. President, bottom line.
Who are you with? Who are you with?
NBC.
Oh, no wonder. That's
Mr.
enough.
President,
NBC.
Who has more authority, Elon Musk or your cabinet secretary?
Any other questions about the World Cup?
Can we unveil the trophy, maybe?
I'd love to do
because this is something special. So today is 100 days to go for a new competition that we created
Right.
together. The FIFA Club World Cup, the best clubs in the world with the best players in the world. So we can show this is a unique trophy. This is the trophy, but it's not finished because it's unlike any other trophy. There is a key.
Oh, wow.
There is no other sports trophy like that.
Oh, that is good. Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh, you gotta be kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wait.
Wow. That's one I haven't
And that's the trophy.
seen. That is something, huh?
We got to win now, Mr. President.
This is a good one.
That's beautiful. I've
Inter
never
Miami and Seattle Sounders play
Never seen
for this
anything
trophy.
like that.
It is it's a trophy of the future.
Yeah.
It represents the past, the future, everything, the present.
And this will be at the White House for a little while.
Yes.
So if anybody needs a picture or anything, you can take
So,
it, but this is.
If you like it, Mr. President, it can stay here just on the 13th of July.
We're listening to tape playback of President Trump from moments ago, joined by the head of FIFA, Gianni
We'll take a
Infantino.
picture, then we bring it back here after the picture.
Let's do that. We'll leave it here. We'll have it in the White House quite a bit.
Excellent.
It travels a little bit also, but I
Yeah.
appreciate it. That's good. And I know this can definitely stay, right? Anyway, thank you, Johnny,
fantastic.
very
Thank
much.
you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
President,
Thank you.
wanted to
Thank you so
follow
much.
up on the cabinet meeting, sir, just on the cabinet meeting, you said Musk will play an advisory role, Doge will play.
We're talking about FIFA. Thank you very
About
much.
the World Cup, Mr. President, you're having.
And they're both great guys. And by the way, they both get along fantastically well. Marco has done unbelievably as Secretary of State, and Elon is a very unique guy who's done a fantastic job.
Do you think he needs
Yeah,
to be reined in, Mr.
enough,
President?
enough. It's FIFA. Is this a
How
FIFA
do you
question?
see how do you see the World Cup playing out with the tensions you have with Canada and Mexico?
Oh, I think it's going to make it more exciting. Tension's a good thing.
Even for the World Cup?
Yeah, I think so. I think it makes it much more exciting.
Sir, the entire committee is here for FIFA with Johnny?
Please
Would
come
you
up.
like them to come up and take a picture?
Please, Johnny, come on, get them up. That's great.
Mr. President, what type of enhanced security do you anticipate having for all of these big events
I'll let
that
you,
are happening over the course of the next
I'll
year?
let Christie answer that question.
Oh, answer what question?
Go ahead.
Christy Noem,
Security.
head
Yeah,
of the Department of Homeland Security.
for this event will be run by the Department of Homeland Security. So we are signing today this document that will say that we will form task forces and partnerships. We'll have incident command centers in these 11 cities that will partner all the agencies and departments at the federal. We'll have some worldwide partners as well, as long
Global
as,
help.
yes, it'll be under our umbrella, and we'll help facilitate that, but also working with our local law enforcement is incredibly powerful. So streamlining those communications, it'll be a wonderful event, and everybody will be safe and fun.
We better be,
Yeah,
right?
it will be.
This is the official ball
Thank you very
with your
much.
name.
Thank you. Ooh, that's nice. I would give it to Christie.
All right, everybody, you have been listening to a playback. President Trump in the Oval Office there with the head of FIFA, Gianni Infantino, along with Homeland Secretary Christy Noem. In terms of headlines that might be of interest in particular, yeah, we care about FIFA, so I got to say that those are interesting as well. Big World Cup coming up. But the president did comment on there have been some reports about maybe some tensions by the work done by Elon Musk and his Doge efforts. He did say, the president said that Elon Musk and U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio get along well. Elon Musk does not need to be reined in. He said they both get along fantastically, and really instructing reporters to only ask questions about FIFA.
You're a big football fan?
Football?
Yeah.
I like soccer too.
That's what I mean, football.
Oh, that-
It's when we talk
that
FIFA, we're talking football, yeah. Ted Lasso? I think
Who
the Ted
doesn't
Lasso
love
effect, you know?
the Ted Lasso effect?
Hey, I should note we are also waiting to hear from President Trump. He's going to be addressing a group of CEOs in the digital assets industry who have gathered at the White House for the Digital Assets Summit today. We'll bring you the president's comments as we do get them. In the meantime, we are less than a half hour away from the close of equity trading on this Friday afternoon. Let's get on over to Charlie Pellet for an update and some business news. Hey, Charlie.
Well, hello there, Tim. I got you covered. 25 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. You mentioned crypto. Bitcoin right now down 2.3%, 87,782. Equities holding on to gains. Has been a day in which we have seen U.S. equity markets whipsawed, but right now the S&P up 31 ahead of the close here, 57.69. That is a gain of 0.5%. Got to keep in mind that at one point the S&P 500 index was trading lower, down over 1.3%, but the gauge rebounded as Fed Chair Jay Powell said, yes, our economy is doing just fine. S&P up 29 now. The Dow up 205, up 0.5%. NASDAQ up by 0.7%. We've got the 10-year at 4.31%. The 2-year right now 3.99%. Gold down 0.1%. Spot gold right now 29.09 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude up 1%, 67.05 on WTI. Bitcoin bears repeating, been that kind of a day, down now by 2.4%, 87,685. So the S&P 500 index is on track for a losing week. On the week right now, down 3.1%. But what about the broader market backdrop? Marianne Bartels is Chief Investment Strategist at Sanctuary Securities.
I don't think we're going into a bear market. I just think this uncertainty has created a cloud over investors, and they're kind of frozen. And I can also understand if some business leaders are holding back on some business decisions until they have more clarity on where we stand on the tariffs.
Marianne Bartels of Sanctuary Securities. After earnings, Broadcom shares, they're up now by 8.5%. After earnings, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise down 12.4%. For on-demand news, 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Hey, thanks so much for that update, Charlie Pellet. Well, International Women's Day is tomorrow. We are focusing a good portion of our program today on women. We're exploring the unique challenges and opportunities they face in finance, employment, and more.
Yes, we are. On the finance side, Women's World Banking, it is a nonprofit organization working on financial inclusion for women. The organization argues that this is a $700 billion annual revenue opportunity for banks as well as fintech providers.
We've got with us Mary Ellen Iskandarian. She's CEO of Women's World Banking. She joins us from New York. Mary Ellen, good to have you back with us. It's been, wow, I think close to 3 years since you were on the program with us. I'm curious about this $700 billion figure. That is real money that we're talking about. What are banks and fintechs?
I'm so glad you said that.
Well, what are the banks and fintechs missing out on here? What are they leaving on the table?
Well, you know, I'm thrilled that you're quoting that number, Tim, because it's the business case that is so strong and is really at the heart of what we do at Women's World Banking. That number isn't saying like every woman in the world is banked or every woman in the world is investing with asset management. All that says is if asset managers, insurance companies, and banks served men and women at the same level, we're just talking parity, they would be bringing in an additional $700 billion in revenue every year. And that number comes from Oliver Wyman doing a really detailed study. It's not a Women's World Banking number, but that's a real opportunity that we think that the financial services industry really should be paying more attention to.
So, Mary Ellen, what aren't women getting that men get when it comes to banking?
That's a great question. Well, one thing I can tell you is women buy more insurance than men. So making sure that when it's offered, they will buy more. So that's absolutely an opportunity for companies to be coming to women with those products. You know, you've probably heard the statistic. It got a lot of play when Serena Williams started using it, that women receive like less than 2% of the venture capital that's invested in the world. Some kind of little better numbers, maybe women receive about a third as much credit for their businesses, debt financing for their businesses. So they receive the services, but so many fewer than men.
You know, it's interesting, and then go back to the $700 billion figure, because that is real money. That's research that you folks have done. It seems to be a good incentive to try to offer these services, to reach these people? Because there is money being left on the table. Are fintechs, are banks doing this?
Some are, some aren't. I think we really, that's, as I say, that's really our job. There's a lot of myth busting out there. There is still, I don't talk to a banker, and we work primarily in the developing world. I don't talk to a banker that doesn't tell me, oh, women's businesses are riskier. But when you take them through their own numbers, you see that women at every level of business, large, medium, small enterprises, are better repayers than men are. That used to be, something we'd say all the time about, micro businesses, microfinance. But we now have a lot more data, and the data is telling us that the risks really aren't there, despite the impression that they are. We see huge opportunity with fintech, with AI, with some of the data-driven alternative credit scoring models that are out there, because then you can kind of leapfrog over some of the real barriers to women's finance, again, through many countries, less so here in the United States, but in many countries. Collateral for credit is the #1 barrier that women face. So if you've got a good algorithm that can prove your credit worthiness without having to put up that security, that can be really powerful in getting more credit in women's businesses' hands.
Hey, Mary Ellen, to be fair, for those of us who've done this a long time, and it sounds like you have too, I feel like I could go back a few years and have this exact same conversation. So, no, I know, but it's not funny, right? So tell me what has moved in terms of the financial community embracing women, because we've seen off of the pandemic, there were a lot of men who lost jobs and women who did not. There's a lot more, women in higher positions, maybe not still equal, but there are a lot of women who are the, single breadwinner in their households and who are much more involved, I would say, in the financial conversations overall. So what's moved? What's gotten better? Any specifics that you can kind of share with us would be super helpful.
Yeah, no, and I thank you for acknowledging that. Wow, this sounds an awful lot like the same conversation from a few years ago. I think the most exciting thing, and in my world, COVID was really a bit of a silver lining. You brought 250 million people, and most of them were women, into the formal financial sector because of digital. You got smartphones into people's hands. There were a lot of countries, India perhaps most notably, that had some really strong cultural norms about women having cell phones. And, interestingly, the Indian government made its first round of COVID relief payments only payable to women and only through a digital bank account. Within a matter of weeks, you had 25 million new digital bank accounts opened primarily by women. So you really just moved so many women into that, the formal sector through digital. And then that opens up opportunities for them to bring their businesses online. So you've seen, a real rush in some of the large emerging markets. Indonesia, for example, has a huge e-commerce business that's growing for women.
Mary Ellen, I'm looking at a live shot of the White House right now. We are expected to hear from President Trump speaking to a group of executives from the digital assets industry. We'll bring those comments to you live as we do get them. But it raises the question, Mary Ellen, and apologies, Mary Ellen, if we have to cut our conversation with you short. I do wonder how you look at crypto, since you're looking at a global view of fintech and finance and banking. Is there a role in crypto actually helping this issue?
There certainly can be. I know this is not perhaps the most popular view, but we gotta make sure that there is regulation, that lower income people are protected from the consumer protections that are in place for, reserve currencies are also in place for digital and crypto. But I think there's a real opportunity. Certainly the blockchain can get us past so many digital identification issues.
All right, Mary Ellen, thanks so much. That's Mary Ellen Iskandari, CEO of Women's World Banking, joining us from New York.
All right, folks, just getting underway at the White House, a crypto summit, which has been happening with a bunch of crypto executives. We talked about it earlier. President Trump entering into the room and getting ready to make some comments and acknowledging the different executives in the industry as well as key members of his cabinet. Let's head to the White House.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. Great honor to have you. I know you've all been working very hard and very successfully. And it's a wonderful place, the White House. I want to begin, is Johnny here from World Cup? I want to thank you for this election. And they just had a presentation in the Oval Office, and I thought this was such a beautiful, this is the trophy. This is a big deal. The World Cup is the biggest sporting event, and Gianni Infantino is my friend for a long time, and during my first term, we worked out a deal to get the World Cup, and then because of lots of interesting things that happened, I ended up being president when it showed up. I was always disappointed. I wasn't going to make it. I was going to serve 8 straight, and said we did it the hard way, but maybe the more important way. So I will be with you as president, Johnny. So maybe you could just say a few words and show how beautiful the World Cup trophy is. Thank you. Yeah, sure, please. Yeah.
The famous key.
That's a great key.
You want to open it, President? Or shall
Well, you go ahead. I trust you.
So this is the new trophy of a new competition. It's called the FIFA Club World Cup. The 32 best clubs in the world with the absolutely best players in the world. And for the first time in history, this competition takes place in the United States. Opening game on the 14th of June,
Right.
obviously, in Miami. Final on the 30th of July this year in New York, New Jersey. But it's not that. The trophy is special because it is a key, and because, as you can see, if I manage to do that, yes, it's a bit tricky. It's not. So this is a trophy. It is a trophy which represents, and that's why I think it's interesting to show this trophy exactly in this forum, because it represents the past, but it's also projected to the future. There is no other sports trophy which looks like that. It has engraved the history of the game.
You're listening to Gianni Infantino, who's the head of FIFA. This is at the Digital Assets Summit at the White House. We expect to hear from President Trump imminently.
America, where this competition will take place. So at the same time, past, present, and projected to the future. And if I may, President, say another 2 words, and then I let you work. I would like to congratulate the President and the administration for not only for the World Cup, the Club World Cup, the World Cup, and the great work done, but also for this initiative that you are speaking about here. If I may add something in this respect, I'm not an expert at all, but FIFA, as you know, is a brand which is globally known, a very strong brand. The soccer economy in the world is worth around 270 billion a year. 70% of that, Mr. President, is in Europe. So imagine the potential that there is around the world only in soccer if we develop it. And so FIFA is very, very interested under my presidency to develop the FIFA coin, to do it from here, from America, and to conquer the 5 billion soccer fans in the world. So if there is anyone here who is interested to team up with FIFA, here we are, together with the United States of America, and we will conquer the world of soccer with the FIFA coin. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That coin, that coin may be worth more than FIFA in the end. It could be quite a coin, actually. Huh? Anyway, thank you, Johnny. Great job. I just thought you should see this trophy because it's really, it's the biggest sporting event in the world, and we have it here. And we appreciate being selected. Thank you very much, Johnny. You do a fantastic job. And welcome to the first ever White House Digital Assets Summit. I know that many of you have been fighting for years for this, and it's an honor to be with you at the White House. I want to thank the White House AI and crypto czar David Sachs, Treasury Secretary. This is David right here, in case you don't know. You know David. And a man who's doing a great job as Secretary of Treasury, Scott Bessent, who's right here. Scott, thank you very much. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, wherever you may be, Howard. Hi, Howard. He's doing some interesting work right now with all that's going on. He's right in the middle of it and doing a great job. Thank you. SBA Administrator Kelly Loeffler. And thank you. SEC Commissioner Hester Pierce. Thank you, Hester. Acting CFTC Chairman Caroline Pham. House Majority Whip Tom Emmer. Hello, Tom. Representative Brian Stile. Thank you. Brian, thank you very much. Digital Assets Council Director Bo Hines. Good, Bo. Great job. And many other distinguished guests. We have a lot of very distinguished people around the table. Some of them will be speaking. I want to thank Marco Rubio also, who's right over there. And we have tremendous people very interested in this subject. And last year, I promised to make America the Bitcoin superpower of the world and the crypto capital of the planet. And we're taking historic action to deliver on that promise, as you know, around the table. Yesterday, I signed an executive order officially creating our strategic Bitcoin reserve. And this will be a virtual Fort Knox for digital gold to be housed within the United States Treasury. That's a big thing, Scott. The federal government is already among the largest holders of Bitcoin, as you know. Really one of the largest holders in the world, with as many as 200,000 Bitcoin obtained via civil law and various other forms of law, and including enforcement actions. These existing holdings will form the foundation of the new reserve. Unfortunately, in recent years, the U.S. government has foolishly sold tens of thousands of additional Bitcoin that were worth billions and billions of dollars had they not sold them, but they did sell them, mostly during the Biden administration. Not a good thing to have done. From this day on, America will follow the rule that every Bitcoin knows very well: never sell your Bitcoin. That's a little phrase that they have. I don't know if that's right or not. Who the hell knows, right? Who knows? Who knows? But so far, it's been right. And well, let's keep it that way. The Treasury and Commerce Departments will also explore new pathways to accumulate additional Bitcoin holdings for the reserve, provided it's done at no cost to the taxpayers. We don't want any cost to the taxpayers. In addition, my order directs federal agencies to conduct an inventory of all crypto assets currently held by the U.S. government and determine how they can be transferred easily to the Treasury. Non-Bitcoin digital assets will be held in a new U.S. digital asset stockpile where they will be managed properly. My administration also is working to end the federal bureaucracy's war on crypto, which was really going on pretty wildly during Biden until the election came about. About 5 months before the election, he became a big fan because he heard how many people were in favor of it and how many people love it and respect it. But I guess it didn't work out too well for him. People understood what was going on and paved the way for groundbreaking innovations in institutional finance. Under the Bitcoin administration, regulators strong-armed banks. I mean, they really did. They strong-armed banks into closing the accounts of crypto businesses and entrepreneurs, effectively blocking some money transfers to and from exchanges, and they weaponized government against the entire industry. But I know that feeling also. Maybe better than you do. All of that will soon be over, and we are ending Operation Choke Point 2.0. Now, some people really suffered. It was ridiculous what they were doing, but in the end, they came around, but they came around for the wrong reasons. They came around only because they wanted votes, and they saw that tens of millions of people were against them because of what they were doing. I also want to express my strong support for the efforts of lawmakers in Congress as they work on bills to provide regulatory certainty for dollar-backed stablecoins and the digital assets market. They're working very hard on that. This is a tremendous opportunity for economic growth and innovation in our financial sector, and will really go a long way. I think it's going to be a tremendous, we feel like pioneers in a way, of tremendous method of growth, and things are very much tied, and we want to keep it that way, the U.S. dollar, long into the future. We're going to keep it that way. I hope lawmakers will send that legislation to my desk before August recess if they can, and they're very much working with you, and you know a lot of them, and a lot of them were committed right from the very beginning. So I just want to congratulate you all for being at the White House today, and a man who knows more about Bitcoin and AI and just about everything else than anybody, David Saxon. I'd like to have you say a few words, David.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're all here today because of your leadership, your vision, and your generosity, and I really want to thank you for that.
This is David Sachs, the White House crypto and AI czar.
Desire to make America great and to introduce a golden age in America, including for digital assets. And we're here because of your love of innovators, or as you might say, high IQ people. Yeah, we know you love high IQ people. And we have about 30 of them here in the room today. These are the top people in the digital asset industry. And one other thing that I think that you love is legal fairness. This is an industry that was subjected to prosecution and persecution for the last 4 years, horrible lawfare, and nobody knows what that feels like better than you do. So we really appreciate the fact that you understand legal fairness and that you're always willing to fight for the right thing, for legal fairness. You never back down. You stand defiant, even in the face of an assassin's bullet. It's an inspiration to everyone in this room, I think. So it's an honor.
Thank you.
So I just want to say it's an honor to work for you. It's an honor to work for a president who works every day to get so much done on behalf of the American people. Your administration is moving at tech speed. It's really amazing. It's actually faster than any startup that I've been part of. Is that your administration moves even faster. So I just want to say thank you for having me be a part of it. I've enjoyed every minute of it. I love working for you, and thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you, David, very much. Appreciate it.
And now I just want to pass the ball to Secretary Besson.
Scott?
David, so today, when President Trump has signed the executive order to establish the strategic Bitcoin reserve and stockpile, we're going to position the United States as a leader among nations in the digital asset strategy. It's important for the United States to recognize this fact and get ahead of the other nations in the digital age. We applaud the president's direction to use the digital assets already in possession of the nation, and we are going to establish this Bitcoin reserve. We will use this authority to augment the asset side of the United States balance sheet. As I've said many times, President Trump is creating assets for the American people, while most past presidents have created debt. And a large part of this asset program can be in digital assets. We are going to end the regulatory weaponization against digital assets. The Biden administration's actions did nothing other than punish innovators, and that all of you have made it here today is really a testament to your fortitude. Much of Treasury's responsibility in this order relates to the tax code and determinations around risk weightings, and I'm here to assure you that we are going to work with the Comptroller of the Currency, the IRS, and we're going to rescind and amend all applicable previous guidance. And we are going to put a lot of thought into the stablecoin regime, and as President Trump has directed, we are going to keep the U.S. the dominant reserve currency in the world, and we will use stablecoins to do that. Thank you.
technology is at the foundation of the Trump presidency. He understands technology. He embraces technology.
You're hearing from Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick.
To drive America forward. The blockchain and Bitcoin technology are a key part of that thinking, and embracing that, and here today shows how much a leader the Trump administration and our president is. He understands it. He embraces it. As you said, you're a pioneer in this place, and this is where we're going. We're using the blockchain. We're using Bitcoin. We're going to use digital assets to pound forward, and Donald Trump is leading the way. Can't be more proud of you today.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Howard. Kelly, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is truly a historic day, and as a crypto founder, I couldn't be more proud.
This is head of the
to be part of
SBA,
your
Kelly Loeffler.
administration. You're moving at the speed of tech for sure, and I will just say it's a great day to have the war on not just crypto, but the war on innovation done. And under your administration, we are truly going to enter into the golden age. And I'll just say, as the administrator of the SBA, small business is a tremendous network that crypto can be deployed against, and so the SBA is open to crypto. So I look forward to working with all of the leaders in this room to advance your efforts here. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you very much. Tom, please.
Well, Mr. President, I want to say thank you. I want to thank you for the amazing team that you put together. I want to thank you for David. I mean, this kind of a meeting, no one in this room could have envisioned this just a couple years ago. You are the one that has the vision. You're the one that said, we are going to do 21st century finance right here in the United States of America. I've been doing this for 9 years.
This is Tom Emmer, Majority Whip of the U.S. House of Representatives.
And that's a credit to you, Mr. President, and your leadership. And God bless you for doing this, because it's going to make a huge difference with everything else you're doing. And by the way, Americans love it. They're going crazy. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Go ahead, please.
Does anyone want to say a couple of words? Cameron or Tyler, do you want to?
You're very shy in front of the camera.
Cameron, I think you said something earlier that I thought was really profound. You said that a year ago you thought it would be more likely that you'd end up in jail than at the White House. You, not to put you on the spot, because you didn't do anything wrong, but that was the environment a year ago. But do you guys want to say something, either one of you?
Sure, that was actually Tyler who said that. but
sorry, I still get mixed up.
But yeah, we never thought that we'd get attacked the way we did in our backyard after trying to do the right thing for so many years and always trying to raise the bar.
This is
with
Cameron
respect to
Winklevoss of
regulations.
Gemini.
So it's truly wonderful to see how things have changed and how the pendulum has swung back in the way that it has. And we've always felt that the U.S. should lead in Bitcoin and crypto, and it's ours to sort of lead and win. And it's just wonderful what President Trump has been doing with this, and we look forward to working together. And thanks for inviting us, David, and setting this up.
Thank you. Thank you both. Please.
I was just going to say thank you, Mr. President. Cameron takes credit for a lot of my things I say, so it's not the first time. But the U.S. won the internet, and the U.S. should win crypto. So thank you for your leadership on this.
Thank you both very much. High IQ individuals around this table. That's what I always say. We need high IQ. So thank you very much. Would anybody like to say anything? Please.
I just want to express my deep gratitude for the seriousness with which you're approaching our industry and how you're actually helping guide it in the right direction. I've worked with many central banks in other countries, and when I was working there, I was wondering why I, as an American citizen, can't help the United States financial system reach this higher level that the world is on course towards generally. And so I'm very grateful that finally there's been a new level of kind of common sense and adoption of these ideas. Me and the other people in this room do believe that the crypto, blockchain, Web3 infrastructure is the next iteration of the financial system. And I think that the U.S. should have its leadership position continue in that new financial system. And I'm very, very happy to see people like David Sachs, Secretary Bessent, Secretary Lutnick taking this very seriously with their time, and very grateful to them too. So I'm just overjoyed to see this, and I think it is a big part of how the U.S. can continue its role in the global financial system. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I thought it was very important that we stay in the front of this one. This is a big one. And as you know, China is pushing forward and very strongly as usual. But we're way in the lead as we are in AI and other things, and we want to stay there. So I thought this was very important, and we have some brilliant people sitting around this table. And it's an honor to have you involved, but we want to stay at the forefront of everything. And this is a very important day in your lives. I know you worked, some of you, very long before people really understood what was happening. And so I congratulate you, but this is a big day. Being in the White House is a big deal, and you have great support. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, please. Thank you very much. Thank you, media. Thank you. Please.
All right, folks, you have been listening to President Trump and members of the crypto community, as well as key members of the Trump administration, among them the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, also the Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, David Sachs, the AI and crypto czar. We also heard from the head of the SBA, Kelly Loeffler, and some other members, as well as the Winklevosses,
Cameron and Tyler of Gemini.
Right, thought to be one of the biggest owners of Bitcoin that are out there. So weighing in, I guess we are assuming that we're going to get, I don't know what's going to come out of this in terms of specific legislation. I will say one headline that definitely caught our attention, and that is that the Treasury Secretary did make some comment about using stable coins to keep us the dominant currency in the world. So by us, I think he means the United States. And whether he's talking about stable coins to make the dollar the dominant currency, this is certainly something that we're going to need to unpack, but that was something that certainly caught our attention.
Well, I'm looking at what's happening with Bitcoin, and it's down about 4%. It's been down throughout the day, but it's right now at its lowest levels, going back to, let's see, just about about 8 hours ago. So
yeah, and it did take another leg down here after the official U.S. markets closed. We know crypto trades all the time, but down about 4.7%, as you said, at this hour. So we did see a little pickup. I don't know. I think there were expectations. We talked about this, that leaders thought that there might be something more constructive in terms of buying or adding to some kind of reserve.
They want people. They want the government to buy crypto and hold it because this is a limited asset, especially Bitcoin. There are no more Bitcoins being made out there. There's a big supply. So if the government buys it and holds it, it essentially would, or ostensibly would mean the value would go up because there would be fewer out there in circulation.
Well, as you asked our Stacey Marie Ishmael earlier, like, does this, if they were doing some kind of purchasing, would it create some kind of floor under Bitcoin or the cryptocurrency market overall? But this is something that has certainly others who don't necessarily understand why we would need a strategic reserve. You know, why? What is the national security argument for it? Why would we do it? And we know it is a volatile asset, commodity, currency, however you want to describe it.
That's a question for the lawyers and for the SEC and the CFTC. Hey,
We're
Carol,
still figuring it
out. The president was speaking. We did see markets close out the day and close out the week here. We did end up seeing the S&P 500 move higher today by 0.6%, the Dow up by 0.5 percentage point, the NASDAQ higher by 0.7%. It was a whipsaw of a day where we did see the NASDAQ composite, or the NASDAQ 100 rather, enter correction territory, but then bounce back up. Still, in the last 5 days, Carol, we did see the S&P 500 move lower by 3% and the NASDAQ composite by 3.5%.
Yeah, we saw a bunch of selling, certainly for the week overall. We saw volatility definitely come back into the market. We saw that increase throughout, in many ways, investors trading a lot out of the headlines out of D.C., specifically when it comes to tariffs. If I take a look at the S&P 500, Tim, giving the closing numbers for the day and for the week overall, in today's trade, you had, believe it or not, most names in the S&P 500 actually higher on the day, 345 to be exact. Broadcom, really an outperformer in today's session, up almost 9%. We got those numbers after the closing bell. A reminder that the AI spend, certainly from Broadcom's perspective, it is still happening, and that gave a lift to the overall chip space. HPE, though, had a tougher day, down about 12% following their results, and some other names definitely coming under some pressure. So 345 names in the S&P, higher today, 156, Tim, to the downside.
Hey, somebody keeping an eye on everything happening in Washington, D.C. is Bloomberg News politics editor Laura Davison, who joins us from Washington, D.C. Laura, I think a big headline to come out of this was what we heard from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who said that as President Trump has directed, we are going to keep the U.S. the dominant reserve currency in the world, and we will use stable coins due to that. What's happening right now at the crypto summit? What's sort of the output, or what are we going to see from the president and from this summit?
It's not clear that there's going to be any sort of specific legislative action or thing that will come from this. But as the Treasury Secretary noted, stablecoins is one of the kind of lowest hanging fruit when it comes to crypto. There have been talks on the Hill for years, bipartisan talks about doing some sort of stablecoin legislation. So they've clearly honed in on that as an area to sort of be a first step. Crypto has really had sort of a remarkable change of fortune, from the change in administration, went from having Gary Gensler, who was no fan of crypto, having someone like Sherrod Brown in the Senate, who was also very skeptical of crypto, chairing the banking committee, to now having crypto enthusiasts like Cynthia Lummis, like Tim Scott, who are very interested in pursuing legislation or other sort of deregulatory matters.
Laura, it's an interesting day where we just are coming off kind of back-to-back, I feel like, events or playbacks. One was live, obviously. One was a playback earlier with President Trump, where he talked a lot about FIFA and, the games that are coming up that are going to be played in 3 major cities. Having said that, there were some comments, too, about Elon Musk and maybe his role in the administration and whether or not he's getting along with the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. There have been some stories, as you know, that have been coming out about some of the tensions potentially, and that maybe there is a reining in a little bit of the power and activities of Elon Musk. But I'm just curious what you're hearing on that front and what the president and the White House are saying.
Yeah, one of the most closely watched relationships in recent weeks is sort of that, any sort of brewing tension between Trump and Musk or those around the president. There was an interesting tweet he put out yesterday saying that, agency heads will be in charge of cuts, not Doge itself. He said we're going to use a scalpel, not a hatchet, when it goes about cuts, which really indicated that this was a sign to Musk to say, hey, back off, slow down. The agencies are in charge. And this has come after some agency heads. The New York Times reported that Marco Rubio and Sean Duffy at the Transportation Department were particularly incensed about how some of these cuts have played out in their agencies. So we're starting to see a little bit of pushback, and Trump, sort of recognizing that and deciding he needs to be a little bit more forceful about, kind of who's in charge of what.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Laura, thank you so much. Bloomberg's Laura Davison joining us there from the White House. We do, just to recap some of the headlines that we had out of that event with those crypto executives and key members of the Trump administration. Yeah, the president saying non-Bitcoin assets will be held in a new stockpile. The federal government has as many as 200,000 of Bitcoin. The Bitcoin reserve will be digital Fort Knox. He also said he wants stablecoin legislation before the August recess. All that in just a few minutes before he ended his comments at the White House. It looked like he stayed in the room and the press left the room. Yeah, that's exactly. It sounded like he was saying clear out the press. Hey, get out of here. I got work to do. We'll see if anything else comes out. But he is going to, he is set to head to Mar-a-Lago later, so maybe he will make some comments to the press on the way to the plane. Yeah, we'll check that out. All right, right now, let's just remind everybody, we did close up the trading day here on Wall Street. Let's head things over to Charlie Pellet, who's been tracking it all for us. Hey, Charlie.
Thank you very much, and here's what's going on. Yes, you are absolutely correct. It was an up Friday. However, I do want to begin with the weekly numbers. A losing week, another down week on the S&P 500 index this week, down by 3.1%. And while we're looking back, let's look at the YTD, the year-to-date numbers on the Bloomberg. So far this very young year, we got the S&P down 1.9%, NASDAQ this year down 5.8%, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average showing a gain for the year, up 0.6%. Today, it was a roller coaster ride in the end, though, stocks did close higher today. The Dow up 222 points, up 0.5%. S&P up 31, also up 0.5%. NASDAQ up by 0.7%. 10-year 4.30% with a 2-year 3.99%. Gold, a little change today, just about flat on the day, $29.10 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 1%, $67.03 a barrel on WTI. Bitcoin making a lot of headlines today. You heard about it moments ago right here on Bloomberg Business Week. Bitcoin right now down 3.9%, 86,341 on Bitcoin. A lot of cross currents today. Traders trying to make sense of a myriad of headlines around the economy, tariffs, and geopolitical developments. Jobs Friday, also remarks from Fed Chair Jay Powell at an event here in New York hosted by the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, carried live on Bloomberg Radio. Powell discussed the Trump administration and potentially what it means for both the economy and the Fed.
Looking ahead, the new administration is in the process of implementing significant policy changes in 4 distinct areas: trade, immigration, fiscal policy, and regulation. It is the net effect of these policy changes that will matter for the economy and for the path of monetary policy. While there have been recent developments in some of these areas, especially trade policy, uncertainty around the changes and their likely effects remains high.
Fed Chair Jay Powell briefly after earnings. Broadcom up 8.6% today. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise after earnings plunged by 12%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you, sir, Charlie. Do appreciate that. Well, U.S. job growth steadied last month. Well, the unemployment rate rose. It's a mixed snapshot of a job market hanging the balance of quickly changing government policy. The labor market is softening with more people permanently out of work, fewer workers on federal government payrolls, Carol, and a jump in those working part-time for economic reasons.
That said, there are still more than 7 million jobs in the United States that remain unfilled. That's according to the latest JOLTS data. So there's definitely some imbalance out there. Debbie Dyson is working to correct that. She is the CEO of 110. It's a nonprofit. It works with companies and their leadership to change how they hire talent. So basically, people who don't have 4-year degrees but have skills are able to get hired. She joins us from Las Vegas. Debbie, great to have you here with Tim and myself. Tell us a little bit more about what you folks are doing and what actually creates results.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. So yeah, I mean, our movement has been really focused again on identifying organizations that are really looking to elevate their talent strategy. And if you think about, as you just noted, with 7 million opportunities available and people looking for opportunity, you're able to widen your talent pool when you sort of eliminate or take away that sort of degree requirement that currently still have about 60% of all jobs that are asking for one. So we're really trying to just widen the pool and give opportunities in a more fair, balanced manner, you know, across the various industries that exist.
Which industries are most receptive to this?
Yeah, I mean, so the way that we look at it is we look at the variety of different job reports that I'm sure you've seen as well. Like manufacturing is definitely leading the pack, but this is pretty volatile. So we've seen manufacturing, you've seen healthcare. You know, we're starting to see a little bit more of a spike in the technology, you know, IT, AI, as you can probably well imagine. So those are typically the 3 leading industries that we've seen, you know, quarter by quarter, and what I will say our coalition consistently is asking us for.
What, you know, if you could change something that would help your mission, what would it be?
Candidly, demystifying that an individual needs a 4-year degree in order to actually get a good job. You know, what we're finding is that talent comes in all shapes and sizes. You have individuals that are unable to complete a 4-year degree, but they've been working for the last 20 years and they're trying to apply for opportunities, but the job description indicates that they need a 4-year degree. Well, if you can eliminate or re-credential that particular job, imagine the opportunities that are able to be open. So there's a little bit of a legacy. We've all been doing this for decades of interviewing people and looking right away when you use AI technology to scrape resumes and say only look for people with degrees, you're leaving behind about 66% of Americans that are immediately eliminated because of this requirement. So it's not to say that we're discouraging people from getting a degree. We're just saying widen the pool and allow others to be part of the opportunity as well.
Debbie, you spent a lot of your career working for corporations. You're former president of ADP National Account Services. So you know that when the hiring committees get together and when they look at folks for jobs, a lot of times they do look at that 4-year degree.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I was in human capital management. I mean, part of a talent strategy is making sure, again, that you're trying to broaden, the individuals that are qualified. And so the way that you think about it is, if you really want to get to the right type of talent, what are the actual skills that you need to gain the employment and the ability to actually flourish and have a sustainable career? Most of us, have learned what we've learned through on-the-job training. It wasn't so much my degree. It helped perhaps open a door, but most of what I was able to obtain was through on-the-job and skills that I gathered through the career. So that's what we're trying to educate, is to just help managers see beyond.
Well, that's to Tip's point, Debbie, though, like, tell us how many instances, once you're, kind of inside a corporate setting, you see how, things work, how decisions are made. And I'm just curious, from your time spent in corporate America, how often somebody would say, great candidate, but they don't have a college degree or something. Like, what goes on internally in terms of the standards. I feel like in a lot of organizations, they still want to see at least a college degree. We kind of make the comments. When I graduated, college degree was enough. I didn't need a master's. Now today, I have a daughter coming out of college. She's like, I'm going to need a master's to do anything, for anybody to look at me, to really advance. Like, how do we get away from that mind thing?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you think about it, the way that we try to go about it is you take a pool of, say, 100 typical types of jobs, and you lay them out and say, what are the actual requirements that are needed? And you literally start with the skills that are required. Now, I'm not by any means suggesting that 100% of all jobs do not require a degree. There are absolutely jobs that you must. I think we would all feel comfortable if our doctor had a degree, or a lawyer, or engineer, or roles like that. But there are other entry-level positions that really would not require a degree. So we try to get managers and leaders to think about the skills that are needed first. That's why it's called skills first. Think of the skills first, and then think about every other requirement. And as you go through, you will find in a 60-40 sort of situation that the skills are first of a priority rather than the degree. And that's all that we're trying to do, is even the playing field so that everybody has an opportunity to hopefully get a great job.
Okay, I've been listening to one of the recent Ezra Klein podcasts. I'm like 10 or 15 minutes into it, but he's interviewing Ben Buchanan, who was an AI advisor in the Biden White House. And part of the interview, he says something along the lines of anybody who sits behind or in front of a computer, their job will be at risk when it comes to AI. Debbie, how do you think about that when you think about how the employment picture changes in the coming years, and whether or not a degree is even necessary in a world where, we'll have this technology with AGI?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's a piece around AI. I mean, obviously it's real, it's here. And I do think that there's an opportunity that there are many front entry-level positions that are more manual and in effort that could be automated through AI that will be eliminated, but it is not every single job. We all know that in order for AI to be efficient and work, there are people behind it that have to program it. So what we've been encouraging talent and even employers to think about is, who do you need in your organization to help feed the engine for AI? It doesn't just learn, even though we might think that on its own. Someone has to program it. So we're trying to now equip learners and talent to think about, how do you contribute to AI to be part of the solution, opposed to running the other direction and thinking your job's going to be eliminated. It's almost like it's a co-worker. So sit side by side, and not necessarily the elimination. It's just elevate. Entry-level positions absolutely are probably at risk, but there's a whole other plethora of opportunities that we see beyond AI that won't be replaced, but could be enhanced by human touch to some degree.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a story that is among the most read on the Bloomberg, and has to do with junior bankers on Wall Street, how they are anxious about the rise of AI, and they're worried that it's going to minimize their learning opportunities and make them weaker employees in the long run, right? Like, you're not going to pull in a junior player to say, hey, help me with this deal. I'm the senior player. I'm going to teach you things. We're not going to, we can just do something ourselves or use AI or what have you, especially on some of those tedious tasks. So you do wonder what the impact will be. I am curious, when you are looking to help individuals or companies help individuals to upskill, what are the number 1 or 2 skills that need to be taught?
So there are two skills factors that we talk about. There's technical skills, and then I would say soft or durable skills. And so on the technical side, you're hearing a lot more around sort of critical thinking. You're thinking more around that analytical, just as we talked about AI, it's the analysis of it. It's one thing to get data, it's a whole other thing to sort of interpret it. So we see a lot more around that. When you go to the soft skills, I think pieces that when there's hesitancy about using skills, it's where do you learn the ability to be a great collaborator? How do you think about resiliency? So part of the package, more or less, when you think about skills, is the combination of technical skills that you need to do the technical aspects,
right,
but the ability to obviously have the soft skills on verbal and presentation skills that, some would argue that you do learn when you're in more of a collegiate environment. And so we're trying to fill both gaps so that there's not a shortage to say, yeah, you gave me somebody that had this piece, but they're lacking that.
Hey,
how do you get the fullness of it all?
Just 30 seconds back to that story that I mentioned on the Bloomberg. I mean, what happens to the entry level? Does it go away, though? I mean, because of AI? And so people don't get that learning opportunity?
Look, I think there's a reality that a good portion of it will. And so I think that is why we're trying to get learners at a little bit more of an advanced state in their career so that it's not just starting at entry. Maybe you're more mid-management and that you're starting at a more seasoned and tenured. But yeah, it's a risk. There's no question at all.
All right, we got to run. Hey, listen, thank you so much. Good to check in with you, and have a great weekend. Debbie Dyson, Chief Executive Officer of 110, joining us from Las Vegas.
Hey, let's get an update on business news and how things are looking after hours. We got Charlie Pellet standing by. Hey there, Charlie.
Hello there. Indeed, this Bloomberg Business Flash is brought to you by Oracle. Attention growing businesses. Oracle is offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure for new U.S. customers with minimum financial commitment. The offer does end March 31st. See if your company qualifies at oracle.com/Bloomberg. It was a down week, another down week for the S&P 500 index, on the week declining by more than 3%. Today, however, this Friday, we had Fed Chair Jay Powell, the jobs numbers, a lot of updates from the White House, ended up being an up Friday. S&P today up 31, ending the session heading into the weekend at 5770, a gain today of 0.5%. The Dow up 222 points. That was a gain of 0.5%. And we had NASDAQ up today by 123 points, higher by 0.7%. The 10-year, 4.30%. The 2-year, 3.99%. Gold just about flat on the day, $29.11 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude today up 1.1%, $67.07 for a barrel of WTI. Bitcoin at 87,095 right now. Bitcoin today did slump by just about 3%. The sports headline, the Panthers have landed Brad Marchand from the Bruins. Recapping the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all advancing. Today we had the S&P 500 index climbing by 0.5%. For on-demand news, 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Hey, thanks so much for that update, Charlie Pellet. Well, fair to say our audience is familiar with the glass ceiling. Carol?
Yes.
You familiar?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, heard
Yes.
of it?
Yes.
Okay. All right. What
Are
about
you waiting for me to say like I've hit a...
No. But it's a rhetorical question
Crash.
that, I don't know.
Yeah.
What about the broken rung?
Not as much.
I didn't know about this.
Yeah.
Lorena Yee argues that it actually holds women back in their careers more so than the glass ceiling. So let's get right to it. Lorena Yee is senior partner at McKinsey & Company, also chair of the McKinsey Tech Council. Her forthcoming book, it's out next week. We got a preview of it. It's called The Broken Rung: When the Career Ladder Breaks for Women and How They Can Succeed in Spite of It. Lorena, thanks for joining us. What is the broken rung?
So much. So as you're thinking about your career, imagine an actual physical ladder. Every single step is a promotion. So here's what we found. That first step is often broken for women. And here's what I mean. For every 100 men that get that first promotion opportunity, only 81 women in the United States will see that same opportunity. And if you're a woman of color, and if you are a Black woman in the United States, that number is 54. And that's why, while we're all looking at that glass ceiling, which is real and exists, and there are a couple women kind of cracking through there, the big numbers are at that first rung, and that's where we're losing women.
So what's the solution here? It sounds like you've identified the problem.
Yes.
That's a big part of it, I'm guessing.
I mean, part of it is identifying the problem so we can at least see it. But what's more important is what do you go do about it? So, there's been a lot of programs and companies that have endeavored to make the playing field more level, address it. But really, what we wanted to explore is what women themselves can do, and how fitting on International Women's Day. So one of the things that we uncovered is this concept of experience capital. So if you think about it, it's kind of a fancy term for the fact that 50% of your lifetime earnings depends on what you learn on the job. So women are exceptional students. They graduate at higher rates than men. They get better GPAs, but they don't excel per se in the workplace. And so how you strategically and tactically gain that experience capital to get the other 50% is a huge piece of the answer.
So what's your top advice to women who are listening right now and thinking about what you're saying?
Well, we have lots of advice, but I think my top one is to make big, bold moves in your career. And that's where you have a skill distance of 25% between what you did before and what you're doing going forward. And we know this has a huge effect. Think of it as like putting money into your savings account and being able to see that grow. When you make those big, bold bets on yourself and on your career and stretch, that has a huge effect. I would say two other things that are really important is spend time in your career in the power alley. And what I mean by that is spend time in P&L roles or profit and loss roles, so that even if you don't want to do that permanently, you have a good understanding of the core of the business. And the last one is, it's not a solo act. You're going to need a village around you, and that means that you need sponsors, not just mentors who are empathetic, but people who open the doors and windows in your career.
Is that better now than it has been in recent years, given that we do see more women in positions of powers in companies?
So, I mean, when we say we see more women, let's put a number on that.
Yeah, well,
so
look, the S&P 500 in terms of CEOs, it doesn't look great.
It doesn't look great. And so one layer under, when I started this research a decade ago, we saw about 19% women at the top. Now we see 29%. Those are hard-earned numbers, so that's good. But at the end of the day, what we systematically see is that women have more narrow, more junior networks. And what's really important is to have broader, more senior networks. The thing is, you can't build a network overnight. You're going to actually need to start working on it day one of your career and slowly build that out. And one of the things that's really important is don't just build a network with the people you work with and in the company you work with. Build a network beyond the company that you're in. You're going to need both internal advocates and external advocates to help you over the lifetime of your career.
So when you mean men get more value from their experience than women do, what do you mean exactly?
Yeah, they're able to. So look, I don't know where they kind of get clued into this. This is kind of a mystery to me. And part of the reason why we did this research
Mystery
is
are men. Men are mysteries. I can just say they are mysteries, but go ahead.
Paul, you might disagree, so I might just let you in there for a second. But
go ahead,
we wanted to make it transparent. We wanted to make that transparent. And what we see is that women are not gaining that experience capital in the sort of as big as quickly. And so one of the key lessons is plan early in your career. It's not just enough to do the thing you were asked to do. You need to actually look up and around and do a bit more.
So as I remember a book, I'm trying to think it was Steve Schwartzman or something, but it's like, if you're going to go big, because it's going to take almost as much effort as if you go small. And I think there's probably numerous iterations of this, but if you're going to do something, just go big.
Just go big.
Just go big, right?
Just go big.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's what we mean by these big, bold bets. I mean, think about how well women have done in school and think about that first broken rung. I mean, you haven't been in the workforce long enough for there to be a true quality difference between men and women. You've been in the workforce, 2, 4, 5 years where you get that first promotion. So betting on yourself is a great bet, and you got to go big.
Steve Schwartzman, of course, of Blackstone fame.
Oh, yeah.
In case you were wondering.
He says go big, Carol.
Super interesting.
Well, that's also for you. I mean, it's for men and women, but just making sure that that women are doing it too.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Hey, listen, just 20, 25 seconds. How much, though, of maybe getting caught up or facing a broken rung is because of having kids? Just quickly.
So that's more than 20 seconds. But to cover that quickly, one of the things we know is that there are a lot of challenges in terms of motherhood. And one of the things that we explore in our research is how can actually be an accelerator. And so just one story I'll leave you with is that, real quick story, is a woman who was a high-powered lawyer in tech. She took 14 years off.
Yeah.
And then she decided to go back. And she did one of these reboarding programs back into the workplace at LinkedIn, and is back and is an executive there. And so just one thing for mothers is you may make a decision, but then you can still come back to the workplace and be an executive.
Cool stuff. Good to get some time with you. Lorena Yee, Senior Partner at McKinsey & Company, Chair of the McKinsey Tech Council. Her book, The Broken Rung, When the Career Ladder Breaks for Women and How They Can Succeed in Spite of It. All right, you're listening and watching Bloomberg Business Week. This is Bloomberg.
It's 4:40 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. And up Friday, a down week on the week. We had the S&P 500 index falling by 3%. Today, the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ 100 index, Russell 2000, all advanced today. Right to the numbers with the S&P on this Jobs Friday, up 31, finishing the session heading into the weekend at 5770. That was a gain today of just about 0.5%. The Dow also up 0.5%, higher by 222 points. NASDAQ up 127, up 0.7%. The 10-year 4.30%, the 2-year 3.99%. Spot gold flat on the day, $29.11 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 1%, $67.04. Plenty of headlines today involving Bitcoin. Bitcoin now down 3.7%, 86,525 on a Bitcoin. Stocks whipsawed as traders tried to make sense of myriad headlines involving the economy, tariffs, and geopolitical developments on the economy. Job growth steadied last month while the unemployment rate rose. Gargi Chowdhury is head of iShares Investment Strategy Americas at BlackRock, and she was interviewed on Bloomberg The Open.
Obviously, given expectations, it was a little bit softer, but nothing in that job number makes me think there's any fear of recessions that are screaming through this number.
Gargi Chowdhury of BlackRock. NASDAQ plans to offer 24-hour trading on its equities exchange 5 days a week, pending regulatory approval and industry alignment, with an expected start in the second half of 2026. Again, recapping, stocks higher, S&P up 31, up 0.5%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Hey, thanks so much for that update, Charlie Pellet. Carol, how often do you hear people say things like, hey, do you have an HVAC guy?
All the time.
Or like a tile guy?
Definitely.
An appliance guy?
Just yesterday.
You got a guy who's a good plumber?
All the time.
I'm actually looking for someone who can do some light drywall.
I bet
if you know
are.
anyone.
Yeah.
It turns out that women, though, are behind quite a bit of the growth in home services. This is according to Yelp.
That is pretty wild. Tara Lewis is VP of Community Expansion and Trends at Yelp. She joins us from Washington, D.C. Tara, so good to have you here. Tell us what's going on in terms of women and home services, because this is kind of surprising.
Yes, thanks for having me. Well, for Women's History Month, we were just released our second annual She Economy Services Report, which revealed that women-owned home services businesses on Yelp surpassed 15,000 new openings in 2024, topping every other category for the second consecutive year. Women are seeking out these opportunities in home service businesses in very, as you said, traditionally male-dominated areas like plumbing and roofing, masonry, more than any other category, including beauty service categories, which historically have been some of the top choices for female entrepreneurship, as we've seen on Yelp.
Hey, one thing I want to ask you, so are they starting the businesses and then hiring men to be the plumbers, or are they actually doing it?
I would assume that, well, first of all, as if you're going to be identified as a women-owned business on Yelp, as the business owner, you have to go through your business owner account and verify that it is women-owned. Okay. As for what the choices that are made after that is totally up to the business owner. But I would assume, as a woman, you would probably strive to be as inclusive as possible when it comes to hiring the best talent, if what you want is business success.
Is this a story about economics that, Carol and I talk about this all the time, and our team has written about this over the past couple of years, the shortage of people who are in home services.
Oh, unbelievable,
anyone
right?
who knows, who has paid for a plumber and sees the exorbitant costs, understand that this is a supply story and a demand story as well, and there's just not enough of supply. So is this an economic story? This is where the opportunity is, and that's why these women are opening these businesses.
I think that's a big piece of it. Obviously, if you know that consumer demand exists, but also the home services category is pretty vast. And I think that there's a lot of these home services that are clutch and vital for any sort of home maintenance or day-to-day operational maintenance of anybody's home, whether they're renting or they own. So I think that there's a stability in that. And then, of course, meeting consumer demand. Of course, we have the big home renovation projects and things like that. But then you have the nuts and bolts of, chimney sweeps and landscaping and irrigation and other things that are tiered. So I think that when you think of the spectrum of what home services, what those services are, there's just ample opportunity for new folks to insert themselves into that. And I think that additionally, in terms of female entrepreneurship, when you think of some of the reasons why they might be pursuing some of these areas is, not only market demand, but the lower barriers for entry. If you're opening a salon, for example, or med spa, there's a lot of costs associated with a brick and mortar that might be different for some of these home service categories. There's also great flexibility and work-life balance when you're an entrepreneur. And there's also growing support networks that are starting to emerge and resources for women in these areas that are typically historically male dominated. So I think there's a lot of factors that are driving that growth and supporting it further.
Is there a certain amount of flexibility to maybe possibly running some of these businesses or having some oversight for women? Is that part of the aspect as well, or part of the reason why?
I think that flexibility, work-life balance, also financial independence and career growth, being an entrepreneur is always appealing, probably across categories. But I think in terms of specifically home services, I think in terms of consumer trust, there might be people that are more inclined to feel comfortable with a woman coming into their home than others. But I think that in general, women that are pursuing it, they're seeing that there is an opportunity that is prime to find success there. And flexibility, as as an entrepreneur, is relative when it comes to how many hours you're putting in per week, but it is at least based on your own lifestyle and time and what you'd like for your business. And so that autonomy, I think, is really valuable to all entrepreneurs, but especially women.
I have to say, along these lines, I have a friend who's been in the media business for a long time, producing and writing, and changes in that industry. And she's now thinking, well, maybe what I'm going to do is buy some homes, redo them, and maybe rent them out or redo them. So it kind of falls into this. Where geographically are we seeing women perhaps do this the most?
Well, we were able to identify the top 5 category, the top 5 metros where we saw the highest increase in new business openings for home service categories. Louisville was the #1, and we know that it was recognized in 2019 for having one of the highest percentages of female business owners in the nation, and so it's showing that it's continuing to grow in that direction. Salt Lake City was #2. It saw a 46% increase from the year before. We know that has an unprecedented housing boom taking place and a rise in new residents. So some of the things that are happening in some of these metros are indicative of prime opportunities. And then, of course, for example, if you see that there's growing metro areas, there's going to then be more consumer demand, more homes being built, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm wondering about the percentages here because you went through some of the cities, but if we look at home services led the women-owned openings, you see some pretty big percentages here. Lawn services was up 31%, light fixtures and equipment up 28%, junk removal and hauling up close to 30%. Is this a result of base effects? Like it was a small number to begin with, so any increase seems like a big increase as a percentage?
Well, I think that we've been looking at this data year over year for at least 3 years now. So, I mean, it's still building upon data that we have previously. So I don't think it's so much that. I think that we've just seen, first of all, in COVID, we've seen a continue increase in home service demand in general, but we've just been starting to look more so at this industry of emerging women-owned home service entrepreneurs. And so I think that that's more what's significant. And I think that once you're breaking it down, there is probably a factor of what that percentage of lift is, but I still think it's pretty significant when you're thinking about market share for any of these categories.
So what do you think? We just got about 45, 50 seconds here. Bloomberg audience that's listening to this, investing audience, looking for trends. I don't know. What's the key takeaway from this research?
I think the key takeaway is that women are finding new ways to drive economic growth and expanding the conventions of what female entrepreneurship looks like. I think that because home services is such a vast category, there are so many opportunities that are vital for homeowners and anyone that needs to maintain their home. So these are industries that I think have a great sense of stability, and continued growth is very likely in the future.
All right, we're going to leave it on that note. Hey, have a great weekend. Thanks for stopping by. Tara Lewis, she's Vice President of Community Expansion and Trends over at Yelp, joining us from Washington, D.C.
Hey, the S&P 500 had an up day, but a down week, up 0.6% today, down 3.1% on the week, though, Carol. The NASDAQ Composite up 0.7%, down 3.5% this week.
There was some big losses for the week overall. We saw that risk-off trade really playing its way throughout. We will see what next week brings in terms of tariffs and so on and so forth. Right now, though, do not go anywhere. We're going to take a break from some of the big news that has been coming our way, and we've got maybe a jersey or two that you might want to buy.
If you got the cash.
If you got the cash. That's next on Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio and Television.
Tim,
I've got some good news and I've got some bad news. Okay, if you're in the market for Michael Jordan's 1984 to 1985 preseason jersey, or Kobe Bryant's 1996-97 rookie debut jersey, you're in luck because they're set to be auctioned at Sotheby's.
I want them both. Easy peasy.
Okay, the bad news. Each are estimated to sell for around $10 million.
What?
The $10 million valuations are a sure sign that the collectibles market has entered a new phase, one where the ultra-rare objects, often from players' rookie seasons, have ascended to a distinct and lofty price stratosphere. So writes James Tarmy, Bloomberg Businessweek arts columnist. He joins us here in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. Hasn't this stuff been expensive for a while? Or is this a new level?
Actually,
I don't even know what money is anymore.
I don't know what a while is for you. I don't know how time feels for you. But
It's
I
a
would
flat
say
circle.
that the market has really only taken off for sports memorabilia in the last 5 years. This is a kind of post-COVID phenomenon, and people have been buying jerseys, game-worn jerseys, baseball cards since time immemorial. But the idea that these things could be or should be or are inherently worth millions of dollars is a pretty new phenomenon.
Although we are talking Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. I mean, these are big deals.
But we're also talking $10 million.
We're talking $10 million.
That's a lot of money. I think that's a lot of money.
We're still talking Jordan and Kobe.
Yeah, you thought sweaters were expensive. Well,
I mean, $10 million. All right, so tell us about who's auctioning them off, how they came to be, how they got their hands on them.
yeah, so these are These are game-worn jerseys from the rookie season and
Does that
rookie
mean they
debuts.
smell and they're sweaty?
That is not as important as whether or not they are photo matched. Photo matching is literally comparing a photograph of the star wearing it with the object itself and ensuring that various tiny imperfections can match so that it's not a fake. That is the authentication methodology that everyone employs.
It's not just jerseys, as you note in the story.
No, it's, I mean, everything from a baseball to a baseball card to a jersey to shoes, if they're associated with an iconic moment,
right,
an iconic player doing an iconic thing at an iconic time, it's going to sell for a lot of money. But what's so interesting about these jerseys coming to market right now at these $10 million valuations, and it's not pie in the sky because they both carry what's called an irrevocable bid, which means that someone is guaranteed to buy them in advance. So they're probably already sold for $10 million a piece.
Wow.
Yes. So,
but what's the point of having an auction?
Well, people might bid past that.
Okay, so that's like the bid that starts at $10 million because somebody's bid for that already.
They'll probably actually start the bidding at 7.5 and let it go up. And
so the person says, okay, my ceiling is $10 million on this.
Well, no, they've already bought it for $10 million, but there's some drama.
Obviously,
there's
I have no
everyone
idea how this
bidding.
works.
It's it's a little bit more complicated, but it's at an auction you don't buy something, you win it, right? Like think about that.
Yeah.
You've got to generate enthusiasm. You can't just start at the price that you want. You've got to kind of build it up. That being said,
Otherwise, you don't have that dude who's like, you know.
Well, can you tell I've never been to a Sotheby's auctions, guys?
This is not a horse auction. You know,
Are you sure?
They're not rapid fire.
Come on, James.
Anyway, listen.
What's the point?
Listen,
I love those people.
There was a point that I was making, and that point is simply that the sports memorabilia market has exploded, and there is a tiny tier at the very top where prices are extraordinary, and then everything else is kind of whatever.
Okay, and something like this, it's like killer.
Well,
right?
It's one of one, right? Like
exactly.
The thing is that they wore a lot of jerseys in a lot of games. These are their debut jerseys.
Who are the people you spoke to for this story who have a big desire to own this type of stuff?
I talked to multiple people, and then actually I heard from several major collectors after the story published.
Really?
All of them telling me that I was not wrong, which is very reassuring.
About the price, you mean?
About the phenomenon of this bifurcation in the market. But I spoke to a couple of different collectors who I quoted, who each said that they were very, very interested in the early periods of sports stars' careers.
Like the rookie part, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so these were people who were obviously very interested in these jerseys coming to market. And I think that there's going to, it's very thin air, right? The number of people who can spend $10 million on anything, let alone a basketball jersey.
Right.
Obviously not a large number of people. But I do think that not only will these sell for a quite fulsome number, I think that there will be underbidders. In other words, there will be people who are really trying for it.
I love this photo matching concept too. I mean, I guess you have to
point out,
confirm it. It's really cool. What?
As James notes in the piece, if the Jordan jersey sells for its estimate, it will have appreciated by about 20,000% since it last sold in 2009. Michael Jordan, a few months ago, finally sold his estate in Highland Park outside of Chicago. It had been on the market for years, $9.5 million. This huge home that he had for years.
He should have worn it to a game.
That's the only response to my comment that is warranted. But someone obviously Kobe is no longer with us, but Michael Jordan, he doesn't see any of this.
No, he doesn't. And I actually was relatively ignorant about the mechanics of the ways that these find their way to the market. It's different, and it's different for players, and it's different for teams, and it's different for leagues and so forth. Everyone has their own agreements, but Sotheby's is actually the official purveyor of game-worn jerseys for the NBA, or I think just jerseys, period, for the NBA. But that's the NBA, right? That's not the individual players. So I think everything is a little bit different.
Is that your rookie sweater, the James Charmy rookie sweater that we can put up for auction?
I knit this to wear here, but I've been saving it for quite a long time since I don't get asked on very often.
Well,
can't imagine why.
That's so not true.
That is not true.
We love you.
Anytime you write a story, you come on our show. Well, you're welcome to come on our show.